Hi everyone, this is Dave Hurst, and this is my video on how to build a Cloudera Live cluster on AWS. So this video assumes that you know what Hadoop is and have heard of Cloudera, although you may not have heard of Cloudera Live. You should also probably know why you might want to build a Cloudera Live instance or a Hadoop instance in the cloud. I'll say briefly that my motivation is that I've typically the best environment to play around with in the past has been things like VirtualBox or VMware and putting a quick start onto those. And that works fine for me about 2/3 of the time, but I often run into hardware incompatibilities or something's not working. There feels like there's compromises. The the cloud distributions are much more robust, and you get the benefit of actually having some distributed horsepower so you can knock off some large problems. So even if it's not just a learning environment, it may be good for kind of a small project sort of thing. So we'll be going through some of the details. This is going to be a longish video. I like to keep them shorter, but it's going to be hard here. So I'm just going to skip the intro as much as possible and talk about the steps we're going to go through. Now I've created this document here, and here's the link. That's can't read it. It's goo.gl/li capital J YV capital G, and then that'll get you here. And the reason I did it that way is because as we go through this, I will put some times in here in case you want to go back and review, and you don't have to watch the whole video. So we're going to start off. The assumption here is that you have an AWS account or can get one, and of course, probably right at the top of the bill here, we should talk about the cost here. This is not going to be free, although I consider it extremely low cost. It's kind of around the double latte kind of range for a couple hours of work. Which is very reasonable, and you can turn it off when you're not using it and not pay anything. So that's great, and we will talk about some tricks about how to keep it low, how to keep your costs low. So I'm going to assume you have the AWS account, and you have to put a credit card in there. Like I said, don't be too worried about that. We can manage the costs. The next step here is to create a key pair. So we'll just go down here. We'll create a key pair, set up the security. We will register with Cloudera and get authorization to get Cloudera Live. Cloudera Live is free, but the hosting on Amazon is not. We'll log into Hue. All that should go fairly easily. But then I think the real trick is stopping those instances so you don't pay for them and then come back. And that's what we'll go through. There's some other tricks at the end that maybe we'll cover, maybe we won't, depending on time. Let's get started. So the first thing is to log into Amazon Web Services. So I've got something set up here, and I may need to blur this afterwards, but I do want to go through the steps so you can see them and see the sort of happy path flow. So this brings us to the Amazon Web Console, and I'm just going to start off just for fun, and we'll look at my bill. And this is a new account that I created just for this demo, and you'll see that the bill here is where a nice fat 0, and maybe I'll tack this on to the end of the video so you can see maybe tomorrow what the total cost is. But I expect we'll be able to run through this whole thing far less than $5. Depends how much I play around in here. Probably just a couple dollars. So let me go back to the main AWS page. And the first thing we're going to do is we need to create a key pair. So I've lined up the documentation, which I think is very good on AWS. Put some links in here, and then there's often sublinks, and you can sort of follow the trail. But this will get you started. And I've also put a few of the tricks in here. So we're going to go to the EC2 console. Make sure your region is set where you want it to be. You typically want the region that's closest to you. I'm in the Bay Area, so Northern California for me. And then we'll be creating a security key. So we click on key pairs, and I'm going to create a key pair and call this CIS436 key. You'll notice that it gave me a key here, so we want to keep this. This is going to be in my downloads directory. You're going to want to put it somewhere. I like to keep mine on a Google Drive folder. You can Dropbox, whatever, but you do not want to lose this key. It's going to be critical to you being able to access your cluster. If you haven't used AWS before, if you have used it, you probably already have a key and you can reuse that key. You'll be using this key for if you stick with AWS and do some other things, you can use this over and over again. So it's not just for the Cloudera Live. So the next steps, we've created our key pair, and then the next thing we have to do is do some conversions to, since I'm on a Windows machine, it's a little bit different for Windows and Mac, or sorry, for Linux and Macs, and those informations are in this document. But for Windows, you need to, and Windows and Linux have the tools you need right on there. On Windows, you need to download, and I've got the link in that document, and the thing we're going to do here is get PuttyGen. And while you're here, you may want to also download Putty itself if you don't already have it. That'll allow us to run a secure shell into our cluster later on if we need to do that. Okay, so we'll launch the Putty key generator in order to generate a private key. So first thing we need to do is load, and you need to set the file type here because it's looking for the private key, and you need to give it this PEM file that you got from Amazon. Open that and save as a private key. We do not want to save it with the passphrase, so we'll say yes without a passphrase. And I like to give the same name here. And we're done. So that created the key in my downloads directory, and we will want to make sure that that's really safe. So put that somewhere where you're not going to lose it later on. We'll use that as we're creating our instance. So the next step here is to register with Cloudera. So I'm going to come in here. And I'm just going to pause this as we fill out the information here. But so you want to pick Cloudera Enterprise. Maybe you want to mess with one of these. I haven't done that yet. And then fill this form out. I'm going to pause while I do that. Okay, so I filled out the form. I got this access code, which I'll probably blur out here, and a link to work with. So let's copy this access code, and let's go ahead and head over to AWS. And now it brings you to a template for creating a stack. You can just kind of go ahead here, except for there's one thing that is important. You'll notice that I had mentioned I was in California, but it automatically took me to Virginia. So what I like to do here is I'm going to change the URL that they gave me here. So maybe we can even go back. There we go. Let's take this, pop it into a notepad, and I'm going to change this to US West 1. So you have to know the name of the region you're going, but that's all you need to do. And let's open that in a new one. Okay, so now you can see it's going to create it in Northern California, so that's a little better for me. Go ahead and go next. I'm going to give it a name here that I can recognize, although I don't know that that really matters. We had the access code that it gave us, which is right here. Put that in here. And a key name, that's the one I created, so that was, let's see if I can remember it here on CIS436 key. And I'm not really sure what this is for, so I'm going to leave it blank. And here's our review. It's going to create 4 of these instances. Now here might be a good point to come in here and do the cost. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll open that in a new tab, and it just brings up a cost calculator and loads it with this is the Amazon standard cost calculator, and it basically loads it up with the information from Cloudera. And so it's $816 a month. That's if you're running 24/7. So that if you break that down, that's really about $1.25. You can also, I probably should have done this. In fact, let's go back here, back again. You can mess around with this to lower your costs a little bit. You can play with the cost calculator and these numbers in here. Most of the things here are more expensive than that M4 large. I believe the R3 large is a little cheaper, so you can bring your cost down from $1.25 to $1. I don't know how that affects performance, and it wasn't a big enough difference for me to make a change. So I'm going to stick with the M4 large. Let's go back through here again. This all looks good at this point, and we will go ahead and create the cluster. So now at this point, you'll see something here, and we really just wait at this point. So in a few minutes, we'll see this dashboard change as it's actually booting up. Okay, so the stack is in process, is building it. This is going to take a while, a long while, in fact. So it's kind of a 20 or 30 minute thing. So we'll come back. I'll put this on pause, and we'll return once this is up and running. Okay, so this is worth capturing. While I was creating that, I got this message. I'm just rolling through the log here, and I get to the this create failed, and it says that my account's being verified. And as you remember, I did create a new account here so that I could run through everything fresh for the video. Verification takes less than 2 hours, so I will probably go and watch a hockey game and come back in a little bit and continue the video. Okay, I'm back after a little pause. So we had a bit of a hiccup here when I first created the first attempt, and in the error log, what it basically said was that I needed a couple hours for it to verify my account. So since I started a new account, so that's one thing I hadn't anticipated when you create your Amazon account, and maybe also register for the Cloudera. You might want to give it a little bit of time so you don't run into that. But basically, I was able to just repeat the steps, and it came up again. Now here, when it came up, I'm going to refresh here to see if we get a different view here, but it should be about the same. There we go. So it came up, and this has been about 20 minutes because I can go over here to the instances, and those were running fairly quickly, but the stack itself hadn't come up. And so now I've got the stack, I've got all the instances that's running on the instances, but the problem is I don't know how to log into it. And that's when you have to go to your email here. Let me pull that over. We'll just shrink this up a little bit. So you'll get an email that looks something like this. It'll give you a guidance page. And this is going to be unique to you. So you notice there's a URL down here. If I hold my cursor here, there's a URL down there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And it'll take me to this page. So now here again, this is a fairly long process. So we've been going for about 20 minutes. It's probably going to be about another 20 minutes. So you'll see this, and keep in mind it took me about 15 minutes to get the email. So that's one of the more confusing things in the process, is that you sort of get your instance and you don't know what to do with them. So just kind of be patient and look in your email, and then we'll come back here in a few more minutes. Okay, so we're back, and a little more time has passed, and the cluster now is running, and this is what it looks like. So that's the same page that you saw with the progress bar now turns into this. We have the IP addresses. Still don't know how to get on, and I'll also mention this. So that process took looks like over an hour. So it doesn't require any of your time, but it does require some patience. And I have to confess, the first time I thought it wasn't working, so I shut it down and caused myself some problems. So just wait it out. So we've got the IPs. Again, we don't know how to get on there until, so if we go back to our email, you see we get another email. And here's another one I'm probably going to need to blank out. But now I've got some URLs and passwords, so, and a username. So everything's up. I'm going to capture the password here, and in order to get started here, all we need to do is launch this, launch that one, launch U, and the password is admin. Or sorry, the username is admin, and I copied the password in. And here we have Hue running. So we can come up here. Well, let's see what we've got. So we've got Hive, Impala, Pig. So everything you've seen, if you've worked on a quick start before, let's just go ahead and do a couple quick things just to make sure everything's kind of the way we would expect it to be. We'll upload a file. So one of the things you may want to do here is you can upload files. You can upload zipped files. And let's just pick up something. Okay, I can use this, I guess. This is some data from a Kaggle contest. So let me grab one of those. Okay. So we'll bring that in, and I guess we'll just do this part for anybody who's not familiar with what Hue should look like. So I've got the file now. It's on the HDFS. The next step would be to make a table out of that data. So that's a CSV file. So we can go ahead and create a table from the new file. I think it was called train users. And let's just call that Kaggle. That's the Airbnb data set for anybody that's played with that. And you notice that it did unzip it. And so here's a quick look at the columns. Again, we get the ability here to set any of the column types. Let's just go ahead and create the table. And you can see if you've worked with the quick start, this is I think a lot snappier, a lot nicer to work with. So let's go into Hive. Okay, and we can take a peek at the data set. Here's a sample data set. So I think this is in this data set, there's a country destination that's really the subject of interest. So we could just do a quick summary. So we'll do select country destination and summarize that. Count star as n from train users and group by country destination. And let's get that in order. let's go ahead and run that. And while that's running, we could also, so it started, and Hive always a little slower than, say, Impala, which I tend to prefer, but I wanted to run them both here. Let's go ahead, and here you might need to do the, let's see. Before I do that, I need to invalidate the metadata. And there we have it. And here we go. There's that query, and let's see, the other one looks like it's done too because I don't see anything in the job browser. So let me pop over to Hive again. And is it done? Let's see the results. All good. So we've started it up. We've got, I don't know if we noticed that, let's come back here to the AWS console here. You can see we've got four instances running, so it's a genuine cluster. There's one master node and three worker nodes. And so let's say that we've finished our work here and we want to shut it down. Let me find that window. There we go. So it's time now to shut it down. I want to go do something else, and I don't want to pay for the Amazon services. So that's the that's an important piece of the step here. So we can log out of here. I'll go ahead and do that. I don't know if I really need to. And in fact, I'll just shut this down. So all I really need to do is I need to make sure that these servers are not running. Now we don't want to delete, if you remember, we also have the stack itself, so I could come in here when I'm really done and I never want to use this again. I delete the stack and then I don't ever have to worry about any of this. But for the course or several weeks, you won't incur any costs, or nothing substantial anyway, if you just shut down the instances underneath it. So we can shut these down with the stop, so you don't want to terminate. That'll get rid of them completely. So we'll stop those. It's going to warn me that any data that's intermittent, now that the data that I put in the HDFS and the tables, those will still be there when I come back. But we'll just go ahead and stop this and let these instances. It'll take a little time to stop, and so I'm going to again pause the video and we'll wait and come back and go through the process of starting it back up again. Okay, so you can see that all the instances are showing that they're stopped now, and they can sit here for days, weeks, whatever, and you won't be charged for those. The only thing you'll be charged for is any disk space that you're using up, and that's really minimal. I keep some disk space, and I pay like maybe $1 a month for files I just haven't gotten around to cleaning. So the next step here is we want to start things up. Now this is the only part that isn't as kind of push button-y as before. It doesn't take the full hour that the first start did. In fact, it's fairly quick, but there are a few tricks to it. So let's go ahead and start, and we maybe the easiest thing to do, I could go ahead and start here, as you can guess, but we probably, I guess we'll call that cheating, because more than likely you're going to come in from not having that page up. So let's go to that page. So the way to get to that page is to get first of all the AWS the console page. So we'll sign into the console, and I'm already logged in. So, and then we go to the Elastic Cloud Compute page. Let's click on the instances, and we can see, we should see the 4 stopped instances here that I have. So basically all I need to do to start them is to go ahead here and, as you'd think, start. And this will take a little bit, but not probably won't pause, because we'll talk about another step, and that's getting into the servers themselves. Now what will happen here is that these will start up, and then we'll start getting charged again, but since they're virtual servers, we actually get a different IP address. So the URL that we were passed, let me slide that one over here again. So this URL that we got, or the 3 URLs actually, one for Hue, Cloudera Manager, and Cloudera Navigator, these aren't going to work anymore. So we go to instances, and so we can see those running. Now the problem is we don't know which one is the manager node, but you can do that. You can just search here for manager node. Let's see if that works. And it does. So now it filters out and tells me my IP address is here. And all this, by the way, is in that documentation that we had. So if you come here, stopping and starting instances is covered a little loosely, I think, in this document, but it is there, and I've pasted the relevant pieces. And the most important piece are the ports for each of those. So if I want to get to Cloudera Manager, which these instructions say we should go to and restart the services, then what I'll do is I'll put in that IP address, and I should have memorized that number, 7180. So the IP address and port 7:7180. And here we are. So it's admin, and again, the same password that was emailed to us. And we'll go ahead and log in. So here's Cloudera Manager. What I noticed is, so these all kind of mention that they're, well, I guess these haven't started, so we might need to start those. And we can probably do these as well. Well, I'll just leave these. I don't need these running, but you may want to make sure everything's started. And then we can go in. Let me go back and grab the IP address. And for Hue, it's 8888, which is also in that document. And again, here, grab our password from the email. You don't want to lose that password, obviously, because at that point, these servers, you won't be able to get to them. You'll just have to shut it down and start over. And here we're back at Hue. Maybe just double check that the, let's go to Hive and make sure the table that we have is there, and probably the history of our queries is there. Yeah, so you can see the last query we did, the table is here. So the data is stable. You can come back to it and then shut it down. So we shut it down, started it back up as needed. I may tack on to the end of this to this video just the charges for running and startup. I would expect it to be a couple dollars. Certainly less than $5 for this whole process. And so basically a 3 to 4 hour session will cost you about $4 or $5, which I find to be very manageable and a much better choice for me versus fighting with the system and having a really nice responsive system working. So I hope that was helpful. Please email me or contact me with any questions you might have or any suggestions for where we might want to take this a little further. Thank you very much. Just going to do a little epilogue here. In order to, so I went into the create stack. In this case, I don't want to shut down the servers. I want to actually delete the stack. Otherwise, the entire thing won't be wiped out. So I won't be using this stack anymore. So we can see that it'll take care of all the work of shutting down all the servers. And at that point, then I won't be able to log in. And in order to come back in, I would have to re-register with Cloudera for another stack.